We're very excited to start our third and final SOC Sidebar, which is on competitive shooting. And I will turn over the program to Tommy Nowak, who is the president of our Duke student chapter. Thank you both for joining us, and we're looking forward to a great conversation.
Welcome to a special edition of SOC Sidebar, live from the Federalist Society's National Lawyers Convention. I'm your host, Tommy Nowak, and I'm proud to serve as the president of Duke Law's Federalist Society chapter. Today, we're joined by Judge Lawrence VanDyke of the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, a jurist known for his sharp reasoning and straight shooting, both on the bench and off. In an 18-minute video dissent filmed in chambers, Judge VanDyke challenged his colleagues' Second Amendment analysis by literally getting hands-on, breaking down firearms, reassembling them, and walking viewers through their mechanics to underscore the real-world implications of the court's reasoning. If you haven't seen the dissent, I highly recommend you check it out. But today's conversation isn't about case law, it's about competitive shooting. Judge VanDyke is no stranger to high-stakes showdowns, and today we're here to discuss his life on the range. Welcome, Judge VanDyke.
All right, well, thank you, Tommy. This is wonderful to be here, and I feel like finally the Federalist Society has found a topic that, we talk about all this other stuff, and it confuses me, but they finally found something that I can talk about. So thank you for accommodating my abilities. So thanks for having me.
To start, how were you first introduced to guns and shooting?
Yeah, so I grew up in Mountain West, Montana, and my family was into, a typical family, shooting guns at a young age, hunting. We ate mostly wild game, did a lot of elk and antelope hunting, and so did that with my family. And then, a little bit of target shooting, but not really any kind of, I think I did shooting in 4-H or something like that. But so I think that's a pretty normal sort of introduction to firearms for somebody from that part of the country. But as I've learned, that's not the same path that everybody has or the same experience everybody has.
Right, yeah. And then you left gun-friendly Montana to go to Harvard for law school. Did you shoot at all up there, or were you just debating the Second Amendment? Yeah.
So I moved to Harvard, had a small collection of firearms by then, because that you have to, I think, when you live in Montana. Interesting thing about, and I don't know if this is still true in Boston, but you actually have to get a concealed carry permit just to own the firearms that I already own. So I got a concealed carry permit and so that was my first introduction to getting a concealed carry permit, and have had one ever since. So thank you, Massachusetts, for that. But I did not do, I'd done a fair amount of shooting up until then, but I got into law school, super busy, also had a young family at the time. And so that period of time when I was in law school and when I was in, at a firm, at the beginning part of being at a law firm, was really kind of a lull in my shooting time. Harvard had a Harvard shooting club that was started by Sasha Volek, which I think was mostly just to troll the libs or something like that at Harvard. And so I wanted to shoot with them, but they always shot on Sundays, and I was going to church on Sundays. So I think I only shot with them once, but I was a proud member of the Harvard shooting club. So.
Awesome. And then you clerked, you went into big law, and then somewhere in all of that, you went to a FedSoc event in Dallas, and that sort of got you back into shooting, am I right?
Yeah. So I clerked on the DC circuit when Heller was decided, I think it was called Parker then, on the DC circuit. So I did. I think I can say this now. I took Judge Brown out, and we had a Celebrate the Second Amendment shooting outing out in Manassas, I think, right after this decision was handed down. And I think there were pictures, and I've been told that they can never be public or something like that. So I don't even know if I still have them. So, then I moved. But other than that, I wasn't doing hardly any shooting. Moved to Dallas, working at a big firm. I needed an outlet since you need to do something other than grinding on cases all the time. So I first got into martial arts. I took my little kids and put them in martial arts. And I would sit there for a year and watch my kids for an hour at martial arts. And I thought, I should do this, a little bit of a midlife crisis. So then I got into it and started doing it for a couple years. And it was great. but I just hurt all the time. Like I would go into the office and be limping, thinking, man, I'm glad I don't have a real job because I wouldn't be able, I could barely walk. And so then I was at, those of you that are in Dallas, maybe the Belo Mansion, they have FedSoc events there. So it was literally at a FedSoc event, not about shooting or anything. And I'm sitting there, and I don't think I knew very many people, so I'm sitting at this Federalist Society luncheon, eating my lunch, and these two guys that are either at my table, I'm just listening to them, and they're talking about this kind of shooting competition where you like tactical scenarios, you set up these paper and you have moving targets and you have walls you go around, and I'm thinking, that sounds like the cool, but I was too shy to ask them what it was, but that piqued my interest, and that's when I first learned about the kind of shooting competitions I do now. And then the last thing that happened was my wife and my mom went together and bought me a firearm, which I think my wife regrets to this day, because that somehow set off, like it set everything in motion again. They bought me a SIG 5.56, which for my conservative friends in the audience, that's a modern sporting rifle. For the liberals in the audience, that's an assault rifle. And so I got that, and I figured I needed to do something. I needed to do something with that, and so I got interested in doing shooting sports from that.
Awesome. And since you've done that, I know you've done a number of different types of shooting sports. Could you just talk about a few of the types of competitions you do?
Yeah. I was going to come and give a demonstration, but I figured, we have security, and that probably, so it's a bunch of acronyms. These shooting sports, and part of the reason I'm delighted to get to do this is I've become a little bit of an ambassador or evangelist for this sport because it's a lot of fun. It's a little expensive because every time you pull the trigger, it's 25 cents to 50 cents. So that's but you all are rich lawyers, so this is a great audience to recruit people. But there's IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association, which is very much focused on sort of having scenarios that would mimic, in theory, a defensive scenario you might end up in. So you have cover that you wear and cover garments, since you normally would be shooting from a concealed position. You shoot around corners, and you have to shoot in a certain way that would be the optimal way. And that's like what I call the gateway drug of competitive shooting. So you get into that first. Almost everybody that shoots for very long moves into something called USPSA, which is more high speed, low drag type, and you end up with very like race guns and all of that stuff, and you're shooting at like cardboard targets, and there's a scoring system. The scoring systems vary somewhat, but they're basically measuring you on a combination of speed and accuracy. So how accurate are you? And you'll have like swinging targets, which is really, I think about like most people have never shot at a moving target. Most people have actually not shot. Even people that shoot have not shot while they're moving, and you're shooting. So the first times you do this, you're a little freaked out, like it's like walking and chewing gum or something. It's very, and then I got in the. I figured, if one gun's good, 2 or 3 is better. So I got in the to 2-gun or 3-gun or something called PCSL, which is where you have a rifle and a pistol, and you shoot one, you set it down, and then you shoot others, and then you shoot some other firearm. And then most recently, I've gotten into, and this was definitely a midlife crisis thing. It's called tactical games. So it's basically, think of CrossFit meets shooting. It's terrible, but it's a little bit addictive. So, and I'm not a CrossFitter, but like you throw bags over something until you're exhausted, and then you shoot at like tiny little targets. So it's kind of like biathlon, but obviously way cooler than that. So that's my current thing, and I'm actually going to shoot at the Tactical Games Nationals, which is in Austin next weekend. So this is why I'm trying to smoke less cigars than I normally do at the national convention, because I can't be sick. So that's my latest jam. And
yeah, it's great.
That's kind of your options. So
awesome. And you're obviously a very busy Ninth Circuit judge. How often are you able to compete and shoot?
Well, the clerks do most everything. So more true than you. Excellent clerks. I do review everything. Shooting is an outlet. Other than this new tactical games things, which is not relaxing. It's like painful. But it kind of harkens back to the martial arts days, I feel like. Other than that, shooting, really serves sort of, and maybe we'll talk about this a little bit more, but really serves sort of it's an outlet. It's something to go do. It's not with stuffy lawyers. It's not with, sorry, that was offensive to the entire audience. So it's not with, nobody calls me the judge. If they find out I'm a judge, they just poke fun at me for being a judge who can't shoot, so so I do it whenever I can. When I'm traveling, there's a match at home this weekend, so I'm missing my 2-gun match right now. But I shoot anywhere from, I'd say on average, three to 5 times a month doing these different matches, because they're usually every weekend, and then we have some night matches at an indoor range. And so a little bit obsessed, a little bit expensive, as my wife would say.
Awesome. So I want to shift gears a bit. So who typically competes in these events? Is it a lot of sort of ex-military police officer types, or sort of you kind of get a mixed turnout of people?
So that's what people think, right? So I see Caleb Dalton, who actually shoots with me sometimes here, and so like Caleb, I think, would say, you think when you think, oh, this is going to be like your ex-special forces guys and your cops, but there's some of those guys there, but there's way fewer than you think, and for a couple of reasons. I think one is maybe they don't need to practice that, but at least the military guys, but I think the bigger reason, and it's an interesting aspect of human nature, it's embarrassing, I think, for law enforcement and a lot of military guys to go to one of these matches. It is very embarrassing if you haven't, even if you've shot a lot, if you have not done this kind of competitive shooting, it's very embarrassing how bad you suck. Like everybody sucks. And I try to tell that to people now. I invite them, but it's a very good measure of your pride. Like, you have to swallow your pride, because you will be terrible for the first 10 matches if you shoot a match. Now, I think if you shoot a few matches, it will help you tremendously. If you carry for self-defense, you should go do that at times to see that it is nothing like when you shoot on a range. There's the stress of the timer and that's all helpful. But there's not near as many. It's a funny thing. It's a sport, and just like basketball, how good you're going to be at it is going to depend on how much you practice. And so you have all these people from, one of my best friends that I shoot with back home owns a motorcycle parts store. He's a grandmaster level shooter, and it does help though. I think some of our best shooters. He was a professional RC car racer, so very, very good hand and motor skill. And then one of our guys was almost a professional minor league baseball player. So you get that sort of all that hand-eye coordination stuff is important. But it is not what you think. It's not a bunch of military and law enforcement guys. There's definitely some of that, but you got a lot of just regular Joes. The one thing, it's unfortunate, when they open back up the government, they should start subsidizing this, I feel like, because it is a little bit expensive. So so that's the only thing. It is interesting, because you also would envision maybe as a bunch of rednecks, but they have to be rednecks with at least some jacked up trucks or something like that, because they have to have some money in order to. And I'm not overstating it, but you have to have some commitment at least, because you're going to spend a little bit of money on it.
Gotcha. And is it pretty social, like competitive shooting? Do you kind of make a lot of friends out there? Do you go with friends, or you just sort of you and the gear?
Yeah. So this is what I referred to earlier. And this is actually very important to me as a judge. You get to be a judge, and you become very insular, right? You become, and you got clerks, and if you have good clerks like mine, they tell you how awesome you are all the time, and that you're basically perfect, and which is great. But it does create a little bit of a problem, and my colleagues are constantly telling me that I'm great, kind of. It creates a problem where you just kind of get a little detached from real life. So I think it is very important, actually, for judges and probably lawyers, especially in a lot of different roles we have, to have some contacts with real life. And so for me, I have two things that do that. One is church. I think it's important to stay active in church. People at church don't call me Your Honor or anything like that. You're just another member there. And then shooting is another social group. And so that's it's a very social thing. It's funny, the people that go and do it and don't like it, if you think about it, you shoot a stage and it's like 1 minute and 3 seconds or whatever. And then you sit for an hour before you get to shoot again, because everybody else is shooting and you have to reset the stage. So my kids didn't love it, I think, because it's just a lot of standing around. But I was thinking, well, why don't I hate that. I don't tend to like standing around. But it's a social thing. Like you're just chewing the fat. You're talking to people. So that's a very important, and for me, really important way to go hang out with real people.
Right. Yeah. Do you ever shoot with your law clerks or any law students?
It's funny. So yes, I mean, I urge them. I want to make sure we don't get an EEOC complaint. I don't make them shoot with me more than once. No, I invite them to do it. The reality is the Ninth Circuit is tremendously busy. I do have fantastic clerks, and so what I found, much to my sadness, is that a couple things. One is they're very busy, and I think it may not be as much of a priority. They're gonna, they're all super base clerks, so they have the right views about firearms, but they don't have. They may not be their passion, their interest, right? So I typically try to take them out at least once. They're terrible for the most part, but I don't hold that over them for too long. And then they will. Most of them will not go with me. I did have one intern who Warren Bloom. I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning. He went with me to 8 matches in the first 7 weeks of his internship. He must have spent like $1,000 of his own money. He was awesome. He was like the intern that got away. You get that occasionally. I have had a couple clerks buy a competitive pistol and shoot with me, but for the most part, they don't. Now, I did have, the last term I had, one of my clerks was a woman who had an 18-year-old son. And so I quickly identified that rather than trying to get her to be my shooting partner, I grabbed her 18-year-old son, and we traveled all over. We went to Idaho, we went down to Vegas. We were shooting major matches, and he had a sugar daddy. Their dad had a job, so he was able to fund this habit. It was great. Bought a firearm and everything, and so that was awesome. I'm looking for more female clerks with 18-year-old sons. So if that's your niche, please apply. And then you asked about clerks. Oh, and students. So I have now done 3 student talks where I go out and shoot with the students afterwards. And I do that because, and we can talk about this more a little bit, but I think it's just very helpful to have a little bit of hands-on experience with firearms. You think about it, it'd be very odd to talk about the First Amendment if you didn't know anything about, if you didn't speak, if you never spoke, or that's why we're all very conversant about the First Amendment. There's a lot of concepts that are very natural to us, even other aspects of the First Amendment. Most Americans are religious in some sort, so religious freedom is not a foreign concept. But if you take away if you don't have any experience with firearms, it's a little bit, it's very abstract. Everything's very abstract about Second Amendment. So I just like to try to get, I think the founders had a very, think about it, the founders were probably generally very conversant with firearms, way more so than the average person today. So it would be helpful if you want to get a feel for how they originally thought about these things, to actually have, had a little hands-on experience. So,
on that note, how would you recommend someone that's just getting into shooting? Any advice or tips for that?
Yeah. Oh, a lot of times people will own a firearm. It's a very common, and that's where what I said, IDPA, like I said, that was the gateway drug. So you can take your regular firearm, and you usually have to have 2 to 3 magazines, and you have to have a holster and magazine carriers, and you can just go, and it's awkward. Show up and you don't know these people, and they all know what they're doing and you don't, but they are super friendly folks. Almost everybody wants to get more people into the sport, and so just go. But it will require swallowing your pride a little bit, because you will suck when you do it. Everybody did, except me. I was awesome from the very beginning. No, I sucked at the very beginning.
So if we don't talk about the law a little bit, I'd feel bad. How does shooting intersect with your job as a judge? Do you think it's sort of informed or kind of made you be a better lawyer or jurist at all?
Yeah. I already mentioned, I think there's a sense in which I guess I could be, do community crocheting or something like that, and it would fill that same niche. But I do think it's important for judges to have something they do, or maybe multiple things they do that are not related to the law, that they can just get out there and And it's good for your pride. It's good for just to not lose contact with the way ordinary Americans think. And so for me, that shooting is is very helpful for that in church, like I said. And then I think it's helpful in the Second Amendment context. It does, there's a sense in which a lot of people, I'd say, this is not controversial. The vast majority of people that have very, strong views on the Second Amendment that I think are inconsistent with what the Supreme Court has told us in Bruin and all that stuff, they also know nothing about firearms, including a lot of the legislatures that passed these laws that, and so, it's helpful to know something. You can look at it and be, no, okay, that doesn't work. And so that's kind of what I did with that video. Was I was, there was my colleagues in the majority were taking in a position that just was absurd, and particularly that was so absurd that it wouldn't. It's not like my colleagues are unfamiliar with mechanical devices, right? We all have mechanical devices of some, and so their argument, you wouldn't actually need to know anything about guns to to know it was wrong, but it's just helpful to actually know something and be able to show it, and so I think it's helpful to do that, so in that sense, again, I think it's hard to explain why, all the reason why it's just having a familiarity with the firearms is helpful to the Second Amendment, but it just sort of intuits in the sense that why would you, almost in every other area, you would think you would want to know something about it if you were going to be evaluating things.
Gotcha. Okay, so now we're going to just do a rapid fire round with some questions. What's your preferred firearm and setup for competition?
Yeah, so that you can watch my video. It's a 6 Sauer P320. Although I'm branching out. I've got a 6 Sauer 2011, which is sort of a step up, I guess. But also, so I've got the 320 is amazing, and I've shot many rounds through that and love it. And so that's what I started with a Glock, I think, because everybody starts with a Glock that's just definitely, though, it's like Chevy, Ford, and then you get the niche-y stuff, and but that's and then rifles. The rifle competition stuff is AR style rifles typically, and I have an FN competition rifle, a SIG, Sons of Liberty gun. I have a lot of rifles because you need different things. You do need different. It gets where it starts to get really down the rabbit hole. You need different types of setups for different types.
Right.
This tactical games, I hate it. So anyway, yeah, I love to hate it. Let's put it that way.
Do you have a favorite gun that you own? It's just like a kind of iconic to you.
They're kind of like my children. I love them all equally. But no, I have my guns that I carry or whatever, and my guns I compete with. Oh, I have a Desert Eagle. So when I was a kid in Montana, my dad had all these like old-fashioned rifle, lever actions, hunting rifles, and then you watch the Terminator movies, and the Desert Eagle is that big honking handgun, and it's semi-automatic, and I needed one, and so I bought one. I worked between college and law school, and I bought a Desert Eagle, and so I took it up elk hunting, and I'm going to get nobody believes me on this, but it's true. I'm not lying. I swear. I shot an elk from 180 yards away with this Desert Eagle on kind of a fluke shot. So I've never been able to get. I never shoot that gun, but I've never. I can't sell it now. It's like a family heirloom or something. So maybe that's my favorite.
Okay.
Oh. If you watch my video, you see that there's an AK-47 in the background, right? And that is not my favorite gun, because that is not my gun. That is your gun. That is the people's AK, because it is owned by the federal government, and it was given to me to decorate my chambers by the GSA. So that is my favorite gun that you all own, and maybe the best thing that's happened to me since becoming a federal judge.
What type of gun would you use in a self-defense scenario?
Yeah, so self-defense is an interesting thing, because you carry this gun around all the time, and for those who haven't done it, it is a pain in the rear. And so somebody once said that carrying a Glock around is like breaking a brick in half and sticking it in your pocket, right? And so so honestly, you end up with a trade-off of wanting to have, like my competition firearms are big, heavy firearms because they reduce recoil, and you want that for fast follow-up shots. But you can't carry that thing around unless you're glutton for punishment. So, you sound like a SIG fanboy, and maybe I am a little bit, but P365 is sort of it is the I guess. Yeah, it's actually the top-selling gun in America right now, I think, and for a reason. They basically, I said this in opinion. I'm always looking for ways to take. I said that in one of my Second Amendment cases, SIG took this small gun concept and like they did voodoo magic on it or something, and all the small firearms used to have like 6 rounds or something like that, and then SIG builds one that has 12 rounds, and it was amazing. And so I have a few of those. So that's sort of my.
Gotcha.
I think that's my favorite, but I don't really. I don't necessarily like shooting it, but it's a really impressive thing. So.
Do you have a favorite post-match meal?
In Fallon, one of my matches I shoot is in Fallon, and a little known fact, Fallon, Nevada, which is about an hour from me, is where Top Gun School is. So if you guys watch Top Gun Maverick. If you watch Top Gun 1, there's a whole bunch of San Diego stuff, because I don't know if Top Gun School was there back then, but, maybe just be fake, Hollywood, right? But the new school is actually an hour from where I live, and I shoot a match over there. Okay. And so there's a great little sandwich shop that I eat at. It's funny, and when you shoot competitive like this, in the winter, you're cold, and your hands are cold, and in the summer, you're hot, and so it's kind of what you eat depends on whether you're freezing cold or whether you're parched because of the heat. So it's kind of, and that's maybe another thing that it does is it gets you outside. Vitamin D? Vitamin D.
Is there sort of one piece of gear that you couldn't live without, or
that I could not live without?
Yeah.
Well, it's a kind of a gear-intensive sport. I think it must be kind of like golf. I don't golf, but it's kind of like it's a little bit of an arms race, pun intended. And so I can't, if my wife is listening, I can't live without any of it, honey. I need it all. So I don't. It is, and the problem is when you shoot different disciplines like I do, you end up with you need different things for. It sounds like I'm an apologist for my collection that I've purchased. So I do hope my wife is listening. But you do need different. So you have a different AR for this. You have so I don't know. You kind of need a lot of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
You need a lot of stuff. But you don't need a lot of stuff to get into it at the beginning. You only need a lot of stuff as you get further along.
Are there any sort of role model shooters that have helped you along your path?
Well, you do. There are these guys that are just. So the way I've gotten to be a master level shooter, which is probably in the top. Because you get competitive, right? And it's probably in the top. It's hard to figure out. What that means is that on average, I shoot in the top 15% as far as speed and accuracy of what the very, very best shoot. But that doesn't mean it's actually higher than top 15% because it's the top 15%. Like if they shoot at 100, I shoot at 85. But there's only maybe, I'm guessing 5% of competitive shooters that shoot in that band. So I'm pretty good, but you get to that level and you want to be, of course, I want to be the very best. But that's like the Supreme Court clerkship of shooting, and I'm never going to get it, Lee. And so and also I'm also fighting a age. You get older. You got these glasses right here I bought because of my eyesight starting to go, and so it's all. Piece of gear. To answer your earlier question, red dot sights. A lot of people like red dot sights on handguns. Kind of a relatively newer development. You actually hear it mentioned in my video because I think a lot of people they just think of iron sight. Red dot sights on handguns, amazing. So it's definitely the way to go. And if you're getting old, you can't. The old man, the short arm disease where you can't see, you can't read. And so red dots fix that because you're looking through the red dot, and the way it works is you're looking at the target, and so you don't have to. Otherwise, and it becomes actually when you get older very hard to shoot with open iron sight. So maybe that's my favorite piece of gear.
Final question: if you could organize a Federalist Society shooting invitational, what would it look like? Well,
I would invite Caleb because I always beat him. I mean, because I'd invite Lee because he needs to go with me. No, but I would just love to. It's fun to have people come. The problem is if you haven't done it before, the first time is so nerve-wracking. It's like less. But I would, honestly, what we've been doing with students, where we just go out and it's just great to see people get a little bit of experience. And so I would just say, come on, come one, come all, I guess. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, I promise.
Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Tommy.